Hi, everyone. It is wonderful to welcome you to the talk about the designers of the future, which Swarovski is so excited to do this year for the fourth consecutive year. And the theme this year was once again really focusing on sustainability within design. Swarovski is going to be 125 years next year, and we really pride ourselves on our green practices in the crystal manufacturing. We have an amazing manufacturing plant in Austria that uses 70% reusable, recyclable water, renewable energy. We've just built a new factory which is LEED certified. So to create designs that are sustainable really makes us feel that we are walking the talk. I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the judges that have helped judge the incredible designs that were presented. Aric was one of them, along with his colleague from Design Miami. We have Maria Rosa Nugent, who is the Dean of Design of the California University of Arts in Los Angeles, Dejan Suchek, who is the director of the Design Museum in London, Frederick Stallard, wonderful designers we've worked with so many times for Swarovski. And then we also have Rosa Bartoli from Wallpaper. So big thank you to them, but most importantly, big thank you to the designers who've been able to create incredible pieces with the briefing that we've given them. So the briefing was focused on architectural surfaces and building materials, which we'll hear Juju Wang from Shanghai talk about. Then we have home decor, which studio Klarenbeek and Dros will talk about. And that was a wonderful collaboration with something that we've just pioneered so recently, and I have some colleagues here from Austria who've worked on it, namely 3D printing with glass. And then we have lighting, which Raffe Burrell has so beautifully demonstrated, again, using low electricity with the LEDs, but also with the ability to adjust the lighting capacity. So now on to Aric, who will lead the conversation. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Nadia, and thank you, Swarovski, for being such amazing partners for these past 4, or I think it's even 5 years, maybe. No, it's only 4. Okay, 5. Yeah, I mean, this award has a really fantastic track record of tapping emerging talent who've all gone on to do really incredible things, and so this is it's really a privilege to be able to spend time with all these designers at this point, you know, in their careers. This year's fair is themed Elements Earth. You know, it just occurred to me that this may be subconscious, because I actually years ago worked with Swarovski on their Elements project, and so perhaps this is all coming together. Yeah, the theme is most visibly seen in the Design at Large section around the corner, which features designers that are rethinking and reimagining how we use, reimagining materials, resources, and production at a time when human activity is changing the planet. Here in Basel, there's a sort of slightly more geological feel in that exhibition, and then in Miami, we're going to be looking at Elements Water, and it was. I don't know if we planned this, but somehow all these designers in their projects at this fair were sort of somehow inspired by water, but of course it makes sense because water has really been very integral to Swarovski as a company. You know, in Vatins, they're surrounded by, they use water in the production of crystals, both to help power the production, but also in the material themselves. This incredible material property that the crystals have, which all these designers have explored in their projects. So we're lucky to have them all tell us a little bit about their work and then about the projects which you'll see upstairs. So maybe without further delay, I'll just ask Juju, who, as Nadia said, is based in Shanghai, but although she was, well, you were born in Shanghai, but raised in the US, but now back in Shanghai, where I actually just moved in September, so I'm glad to, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so please, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the Swarovski team and also Design Miami for having me. My name is Juju Wang. I was born in Shanghai, but grew up in the States in California. And after graduation, I moved back to Shanghai. I wanted to know a little bit about my background and the cultural. Thank you. And so after I moved back to Shanghai, I wanted to know a little bit about the Chinese tradition and also the Chinese handicrafts. Paper was one of the 4 greatest inventions of China, so I thought I should start with that. So I did a little bit of research and found out this little village next to Xishuangbanna province. And so I just went. And I stayed there for 2 weeks at first. I thought I was just gonna learn the technique behind how to make paper because that village has been hand producing paper for 800 years. And, but when I got there, it was just in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by mountains, and it was just a really, really beautiful village. And I got there, not only that I really, really enjoy the environment and I really enjoy the people who were living there because there are 196 households in this village and everybody was making paper for a living for 800 years. And at first they said that the village was cursed. Why? Because this is the mountain and some village were down there, they were planting vegetables and rice for a living. And then there were a village on the top of a mountain who were planting tea trees to make a living. But the village is like in the middle of the mountain. And then they said, we're cursed because we can't make any money. And then they found this tree around them. And then coincidentally, they just invented the paper making technique. And that's what they've been doing for the 800 years. And what's really incredible about this village is they are kind of like isolated. And the first night when I got there, they were having this big village party, and everybody was sitting. There were like 20 different tables, and everybody was just sitting around the table. Men were sitting separately by women, but then the women who were sitting on the same table, they were wearing the same dress, the same accessories, the same flowers on their head. I thought they were related, but they're not, because their husbands are the same age, which is really, really, this is something that's not expected. So I stayed there for 2 weeks, and I learned the tradition, the technique of making paper, and I came back to Shanghai to make this installation. It's called the House of Clouds. So all of the clouds, they were made by this dye paper. It's called the dye paper because everybody belongs to the dye ethnic group. And then they were laser cut in 27 different shapes of clouds, and each of them were individually hanged on a 3-meter diameter system, and then you can rotate them by hand. And then when you rotate them, then the lights go through the clouds, and then they make beautiful shadows on the wall. This installation is also a 5 cents installation in terms of the smell of the forest and the sound of the music, and then there's a swing in the installation. And then I wanted people to come in not only to enjoy like the atmosphere, to relax, to calm yourself down, but also to learn about the traditions, the paper making technique, and also the culture behind. And that was one of the installation I did. And then the other one was in 2016 during the Nanjing Expo, where they had this conference inside the palace. It's a 600-year-old palace located in Nanjing. And then the Chinese government wanted something different. They not only they wanted to show the history and the tradition, but also they want to show that they're also open-minded. They accept new things, new creativities. And then, so I made this installation inside the palace for the conference. And if you have been to China, you've seen the palace. The palace is gigantic. I mean, if you want to take the full picture of the palace, you have to stand like 100 meters away to fit the whole palace inside your the picture of the frame. So I've noticed that people have been spending like way back, and then after they take the picture, they walk straight into the palace to see the inside exhibition. But then the details of the palace outside, the facade is so beautiful, so I didn't want people to miss that. So what I did is I took away the color and the material of the palace facade doors, and I just laser cut the design onto acrylic that is right next to the palace doors. So on the left side is the 600-year-old palace doors, and on the right side is a contemporary design of the original palace door itself. And you're walking in the corridor as if you're transposing through time. And the acrylic material itself is hard enough so that you feel really safe inside the corridor, but it's also so transparent that you can also enjoy the view outside. Yeah, so so this is what I've been doing. I saw in addition to making contemporary modern installation, but I also want to tell the traditional side of me. Thank you.
Hi, Raffe Burrell. I am a lighting designer based in London, and most of the work I do tends to be kind of custom creations for private clients around the world, which is quite nice. And my background is very hands-on. Kind of started off very small scale, and set up my own studio a couple of years ago. This is one of the pieces that I've kind of released recently. It's kind of stemmed from working with natural materials in the past couple of years. Last year working on a project with alabaster and natural stone, sourced from Italy, and pairing it with glass, but quite nice kind of transitioning across many different materials and learning things as I go. Kind of very hands-on early on in the process, and then I don't know, very much enjoy getting into workshops and learning as much as I can, and also questioning these very professional, highly skilled artisans that work with these materials, and kind of asking questions that they perhaps don't expect, because they're used to working with materials in a particular way, and I go in there without kind of full knowledge of how to do something, but I don't know, it often ends up with something that they wouldn't have imagined, I can't imagine, and you kind of start off very early on in a project, you have a concept, and kind of translating that through to the final result, it's just very often very, very different to where you've come from and where you've started. Another natural kind of material I worked with last year was the rock crystal, which you can see behind me. But it was just a beautiful material for a project in London that, like most projects I work on, can't be featured online. And so I thought I would create pieces kind of in the office whilst projects are kind of being signed off, and put it online, put it out there in the world, basically. And the table lamp here, it kind of emphasizes the material. It's kind of subverting a kind of classic lamp. There's no lampshade. We've got a very sleek base at the bottom, which is where the light kind of source is positioned, and just kind of emphasizes the material, and everyone is completely unique, which is kind of nice. You have an element of control, but then at the same time, it's nice to see different ones coming in, and yeah. The next one is very often clients will, in particular, request crystal, and they will ask specifically for Swarovski crystal, and it's fantastic because they know exactly what they want, and they're aware of the kind of importance of the brand and what the crystal can achieve. And this piece is something that kind of follows on. It's interesting looking back and seeing pieces I've done in the past, and then this is kind of followed on from an old project. But the idea behind it was to create something that uses or blends kind of natural components with the man-made. So the glass is obviously man-made, but then the elements kind of mixed in between, and kind of natural rock crystal, the same in the lamp used in the past piece. Yeah.
Yeah, shall we start? Yes. Yes. Hey, great. Images. Okay, I'm Aric, Klarenbeek, and want to introduce?
I'm Maartje Dros.
Yeah, so we're from the Netherlands. Our studio is in Zaandam, next to Amsterdam. It's very known for the windmills and the tradition in actually pre-industrial site, one of the earliest industrial sites of Europe. Everything was bio-based. Energy was used directly to be used into these kind of small-scale factories, and that's actually where our studio is. We exist now 15 years. Our background is the Design Academy in Eindhoven, where we also teach at the Social Design Master, and where we also work with students on, for instance, biomatter. So we're founding there a biolab. It's one of the examples. And that's one of the works which you can see here. So we always work from a social context. So our projects are context related. They are sometimes in public space, sometimes in the interior. And this was a project we started around 2010 with the University of Life Science in Wageningen. And we started to explore how we could replace traditional fossil oil-based plastics into other resources. And then we found it into the root structures of mushrooms called mycelium. And that enabled us to 3D print a kind of living paste and use the microorganisms to bind organic waste into a solid structure. And actually we were the first 3D printing that, and recently the chair has been acquired by the Centre Pompidou in Paris. I'm very proud of. But it's also an ongoing process. As you can see, it's now 10 years of this research. And we're trying to implement it. And we strongly believe in this 3D printing because it enables us to fabricate decentralized. So we believe that that we need these kind of hubs all around our planet with specialized print hubs, such as these ones or other ones, where we have these very high quality or using these microorganisms or nature or the elements which we have around us in order to create locally, and that enables us to eliminate transport, to bind in this case also CO2, but also restore social structures within a society or within a small community. And that led also to another project, which is actually going to be presented in about an hour with Atelier Luma. There's a book in the bookshop, so the book will be launched. Yeah, at 4 o'clock. So you can already find it there. And yeah, do you like to tell about that, the LG Lab?
Yeah, I thought you mentioned that the work of Swarovski was launched in an hour, but it is already open, of course. Yes. We're launching. Yes, we through the project with printing, with bio-based materials, connecting by giving a visionary idea and trying to really create it and do it, creating new infrastructures for production as well. We were asked by Atelier Luma to do a proposal for their upcoming lab, a think tank, thinking and designing, combining social design resources out of the area, and trying to link it to the local community and finding new economical models. We suggested to start an algae lab, since we were also in the Netherlands starting to work with algae. For us, this was very relevant because in Holland, land is scarce. We have a lot of water, and production on water in salted water areas was a topic a topic that was well bespoken. And in Arle, we found the salt fields. I don't know if you know the city, Arle and the surroundings. It has a beautiful salin. It has a salt production mines on the land. But salt isn't economical viable anymore. But there are a lot of microorganisms in the water that actually can be very productive and useful for nowadays materials and products. So there we installed the algae lab. We actually copied sort of our lab from Zaandam to the south of France, and also started to invite biologists of the area, local makers, local producers, the universities to collaborate with us, and came with the, hey, sorry, I forget something.
Oh yeah.
Here we're talking about. And so we came to this new material made out of algae, various sorts of algae, which can be used for their polysaccharides, their pigments, their nutrients as well. But we first take them out, and then we're left with fibers and other ingredients that we can use for production. And came to this collection of Roman pottery. Arles is very rich in its Roman history, so this was the first link to the area that we made with the people out of the area. I think that's it for now, as an introduction. Thank you.
This is really fantastic background that gives us all a sense of your work. I mean, Juju, there's such a wonderful sense of the ephemeral, let's say, in your work, and perhaps Raffe, a very strong sensitivity for the materiality of the work that you do, and of course your research into sort of microorganisms, but in relationship to local sort of cultural traditions as well, like you, Juju. I guess maybe it'd be interesting to hear from you how your different approaches sort of translated into your projects upstairs, and I'm also curious to know how you all wound up doing some like water or projects referencing water as well. Here we go.
This is an installation called Secret. It was actually inspired by the Swarovski crystal rocks. When I visited the Swarovski branch in Shanghai, and I had the crystal rocks in my hand. I was actually glued onto a plate, and I held it horizontally to my eyes. And the image that I saw reminded me of the beach, because it looks like the water surface with the sparkles on top. And as I mentioned before, I grew up in California, in the Bay Area. We have so much water around us, and I remember just going to the beach every other week with my friends, and we're just sitting at the beach, just watching the sea. It was very calming, and it just relaxes me. And at the moment when I saw the crystal rocks in my hand, I knew this is the installation I was going to make. So this installation has a 60 plexiglass in 3 different colors, and they transition from transparent to darker blue to darker black, and as if you're walking into the sea. And each individual plexiglass, they turn through the tip of your finger, and as it turns, it just gives you this memorizing effect, and it calms you down, and it's mimicking the surface of the sea. And the Swarovski crystals on top is mimicking when the sunshine hits the top surface of the sea, and it's making the sparkles, and that's where the shape comes from. The whole installation is in a shape of a water drop, because it was inspired by a quote saying that in 1 drop of water you can find all the secrets of the ocean. I thought it was just very poetic and romantic. And in this installation, I hope that for the people who come to the installation, they can be relaxed and be calmed for a little bit, and then, because we're living in a very fast-paced society, and then just to calm down a little bit inside the installation and then move on with your life. Actually, I was at the booth for 2 days. I got different reactions from different crowds of people. People like my age, when they come, they instantly take their phone and start, taking pictures, taking videos, posting online. But the elder ones, they take their time. They're a little bit slow, and then they like to play with the plexiglass. You feel the slow, like the energy. But then the little ones, they just have so much energy. They come run around, and then they play with it as if you're, next to the beach. And then there was a teacher studying psychology, and she came in and she said, this would be great at the children's hospital because it's like encouraging children while fighting for their sickness, and then the children just love it. And I think having different response from the audience is really encouraging.
Well, that brings up an interesting question, and maybe this is a bit abstract, but like, where would you locate the design in your project? I mean, is it in the actual physical, forms that you've created using these particular materials? Is it in the sort of phenomenological effects, that these materials create? Or is it in the interaction that it prompts with these children and so on that you're talking about?
I think at first it's more of my background, because my background is so diverse. I mean, it connects back to China, but also it connects back to the everyday life, because I think art is just based on the artist's everyday life. But then also in addition to that, I would like to connect back to the society as a whole and the environment as a whole, because as an artist I get a very probably slower schedule than the people working in the office, and I enjoy my life. I travel a lot, but then I feel like there are a lot of friends around me constantly getting very stressed, especially living in Shanghai. So a lot of my installations are just like very calming, such as the House of Clouds, and also this one, very calming, and try to be just, slow people down.
I mean, I don't mean to generalize, but I mean, in China, you often do see people reading design in different ways than they might be read here, right? And often there's a kind of different sort of interpretive way, or even metaphorical way of looking at design. I mean, for you, how when you start thinking about a project, I mean, what's your starting point? Is it in the sort of the sort of symbolic and cultural meaning that you want to evoke, or do you start somewhere else?
I think I don't particularly think about do an installation just to do an installation, but the idea just comes to me. Whatever, for example, I play with my daughter, I take her to travel, and then sometimes this idea just sparkles, and I knew I wanted to make this installation.
So it's very intuitive.
Yes.
And then Raffe, when you were talking about your rock project, and this will lead to your Swarovski project, I found it interesting that you said that you often like to ask people who work with a certain material to do things with that material that they're not used to doing, right? But with your Swarovski project, you actually chose to use off-the-shelf components.
For the collection reflection, it is a pendant and wall light, or collection of wall lights, and decided to use a component that was off the shelf, and I think it's kind of very much in the nature of the shape of that component, the prism. But we all know it to scatter light, to do exactly that and give you the reflections and refractions that Swarovski could do so well. And in terms of kind of emphasizing it, I think it's just kind of years of experience of working with different materials, whether it's glass or crystal, and just knowing, I hope anyway, but how potentially to enhance the material. And I think in the pendant light, especially with the building up of the tiers, you've got just the endless kind of effects just bouncing back and forth and, growing. And, the piece was kind of solidified after our fantastic tour around the manufacturer, which we're kind of very privileged to have been able to do. And,
So, I probably threw you off track a little bit.
Not sure.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the piece.
Okay, yeah. So it's a pendant light, wall light, and kind of, I don't know, just attempting to dramatize what Swarovski crystals can do so much. And it's doing what the prism is doing itself. It's reflecting light, but reflecting the form of the crystal as well. When you're looking at it from the side or from the front, it's that classic prism form. And yeah, just kind of emphasizing what it can do, really.
Yeah. But there was something about if I'm understanding correctly, also you were looking at sort of Art Deco, but also the waterfalls of the of the Tyrolls, where Swarovski is based.
Just outside the headquarters.
Yeah. Where did that come from? And
I think it's kind of what we're. I mean, as a designer, you're inspired by so many things, and it's difficult not to be. I mean, everything around you, whether it's nature, art galleries, museums, and the connection with the waterfalls, it's just as you're moving around it, it's kind of in the pendant light, the lighting is dramatically changing, and then in the wall lights, the positioning of them, you've got the effect on the wall, which very nice, kind of very nice. Didn't kind of imagine it in the flesh. I don't think you can on kind of beforehand, and exciting to see upon arrival and seeing it all come together. Yeah.
Maybe Aric and Maartje, you can tell us a little bit.
Here's a close-up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think our studio is at this moment really interested in envisioning the next steps towards production and product material, seeing this moment of time and the shifting we see around us. So for the question of Swarovski, we thought this was a perfect moment and question to make a piece that is a contemplation piece, a conversation piece, something to philosophize about. So we took the Arctic and its melting ice caps as our guide towards form. So what you see is various table pieces that when you look from the top view, you will see that you will see the reason, the present outline of the ice cap of today, of the Arctic, and at the bottom you find the one of 1980. And in between the layers, some of the objects are stackable. You find the outlines in the years in between. What you see is it's quite a spontaneous figure that comes out. It's kind of intuitive. It's not heavy. It's uplifting, but it is getting smaller. And we would also like to address it like this. Let's come together, be intuitive, use our fantasy, and keep on having a strong discussion and active houding. Be active towards these kind of changes.
Yeah, so that's why it's called reorient. Our changing planet, we have to cope with it, but it also gives us solutions and opportunities and new insights. And so Maartje talked about the form. Maybe I would like to talk a little bit about the technique and the material, because I like that a lot. So as Nadja was telling, we got the fantastic opportunity to work with crystal glass printers. You know, we were working for a decade with printers, so we got super excited that there was a crystal glass printer, which actually used the same kind of technique we use with our own printers, so building up material layer by layer. So it's a relatively small machine. So if you look to that, like how the traditional fabrication works, you need a big factory for glass, for processing. There's a lot of crafts involved. There's a lot of processing, and you need a lot of space. And this is relatively small, and therefore also replicable and scalable. And that's again the power of the 3D printer, which I find very strong to explore. And it was also something that Swarovski was exploring. So we were working with the team, with Hannes, and trying to find out from how can we make this work, what is the best way. And we were prototyping simultaneously on a studio, and then you can create a whole form, and then you have another copy in this kind of very luxurious, nice material, which is also, if you look to the material itself, is one of the most abundant materials on our planet, sand. And then we also were brainstorming about this kind of possibilities if you look to the future of material, because sand, there's a lot of sand that derives even from microorganisms. As Juju was telling, in every drop there are tons of microorganisms, and one of them is the diatoms, and they grow glass. They live in a glass shell. You can actually use it also as a new material. So we envision from, can we grow glass, and can we use it then locally in this kind of new way of production? So that's kind of the thoughts which were behind this this project.
Well, to sort of stay in a technical sort of vein, I mean, we've of course all been seeing and well, a lot of designers like you have been working with 3D printing in different materials, and we've all been seeing it and hearing about the possibilities for a long time. I'm just curious, like, how did you find working with 3D printed crystal versus other materials? I mean, what are some of the challenges or opportunity or possibilities that that 3D printed crystal present?
Yeah, I think opportunities are very rich because it's a very pure, clear material. It's you can recycle it infinitely. So it has a lot of forces and a lot of strength. Also, if you look to applications and if you look to even the visual outcome, the reflection value, the value as an object, I think that's very important, because what I see in 3D printing, that it stays merely in a kind of maker scene, creating even more plastic waste. And this is actually adding value. And then you have an object which hopefully people want to actually use, that it starts to replace our ordinary interior objects. So I think that's a strength, but we also had a lot of technical struggles, but that was the fantastic exploration of this past half a year, that through a lot of reflection and over Skyping and trying to make it work and finding the right forms, the right colors. Yeah.
We do want to make sure there's time for anyone in the audience to sort of ask questions or make comments. So if you have a question? Thomas. Here. No.
I just wanted to know from the start of going into the project and your perception of Swarovski in advance, and then obviously working with the company now for the past 7-8 months, how did you go into it and how are you coming out of it? And obviously it's just the start as well, but I'd be interested to hear, the whole experience. So maybe start with Maartje and Aric.
We were amazed. It was fantastic. Of course, the shops and the items, and Swarovski is everywhere in the newspapers, magazines. We know it very much as an aesthetical brand that shows aesthetics. But when we came to Wattens and saw the production place and got the introduction and saw all the innovation spread out there, and the knowledge that there are more robots somewhere else or more craftsmen hiding everywhere. I think, for us it was a sort of paradise, and I also feel that what I really also loved is the open workspace, which was for us also, we implemented in Arles, in the south of France, also an open workspace. I think if we open up our knowledge and technology to various people, experts, and really make connections, try to be open towards other connections, that we grow quick. And as Aric said, for us it was a beautiful ride and experience and a way to gain another knowledge. Yeah, thank you for that, everybody.
I think for me it's quite very surreal. I started. I think the first project I worked on with Swarovski was about 12 years ago with Paul Coxedge for Crystal Palace in 2008. And it's just, I think if now it doesn't feel real, but very aware of the company, I don't know, for as long as I can remember, but just very privileged to be here now and be given the kind of opportunity and see everything kind of firsthand rather than working through someone else, but for myself. And yeah, just experience it really, and got to go to Austria, got to go to the headquarters and see it in the flesh. And it's for me, it's very interesting. Seeing the machines that are doing everything, and also seeing certain projects from 5, 6, 7 years ago that are kind of dotted around and showcased. And yeah, no, very happy to be here.
Years ago, I know Swarovski as a definition of crystals, but recently, I mean, throughout these years, it's not only about crystals, but I think it's, I've learned so much about the protection of the environment, and importance of the young designers and artists, especially towards women. I think it's, knowing Swarovski, the brand and the value behind, it's really, fits the saying of, with greater powers comes greater responsibility. I think Swarovski has taken the responsibility of not only, making crystals, but also making the world a beautiful place. I think it's an honor to work with the brand and knowing the value. For all of my installations, we make the installation, but this time it's different because I only come up with the idea, but the Swarovski team made the whole installation. And I was really anxious because, I didn't see anything before Basel. So, and I was just talking to my colleagues, I'm really anxious to see it, what if something, goes wrong? But my colleague was like, calm down, they know what to do, they're really professional. And it turned out really, really amazing. It's more than I can ask for. And thank you, I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you.
And any other questions or comments? Yes. Sorry, 1 second.
Hi, my name is Dora Uray. The question is for Aric and Maartje. So you talked about the form of the Arctic, which can be, we were upstairs and seen the exhibitions, but can you tell something, how does that relate with the other form of the flower vases? That they are like three shapes?
Yes, it's all the same principle. So if you look at it from above, then but then you need to have the 3 stacks together. So you have these 3 stackable faces together, and that forms the plan of the Arctic. So Greenland, Russia, America. You will recognize it by, if you look to these movies of this declining Arctic, you will recognize it. And it is the same. So it's also the timeline that goes from the bottom till the top, but it is another layer. So every layer, for instance, is 10 years, and it's a stackable face, so it can slowly drift apart, like the glaciers are drifting apart, and then the segments can even be taken off in order to make higher or lower faces. And that also accounts for the lower, the treasure boxes and the other elements which you see around. Which have the same timeline. Is that clear? It's more extended. Yeah? Yes. Yeah. You could put more data layers in there. Yeah, that would be super exciting. And even you could program printers that every day they would make a new layer, and they could make a new day of how it looks now. So like as a concept, you could build it out much further. Yeah. Is that clear? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Well, I guess we can, I think we're actually right on time. So that's a good way to end. I mean, I think it's really a remarkable thing. And we call this talk, I don't even remember what we call this talk anymore. It's something about phenomenology and consciousness and so on and so forth. And it all is a bit abstract, but what's, I think, so interesting about, this award and sort of having it be with Swarovski, which is a crystal company, which is highly this very material product, but at the same time very immaterial, right? I mean, you're sort of you're making something, but the thing is only sort of the part of the story, and very literally, it's almost sometimes more about the effect that thing creates, and to see all of you take these different approaches to this material is really fascinating. I mean, the notion of memory I think is quite poetic. I mean, your algae projects. The fact that you chose to print them in the shape of Roman vessels to refer to the Roman history of Arles, but now you're sort of printing the shrinking polar ice caps because we're increasingly aware of the fact that those ice caps will probably soon be nothing but a memory, at least for most of the year. There's something very sort of poetic about it, but also maybe not uplifting, but I think a certain kind of acceptance. Let's say, the fact that we know there are these certain inevitabilities. Excuse me, and we can change the things that we can change, but we can also cope with the things that we can't change, and that's really wonderful.